feel like Kobe in the fourth quarter.
This is the Dane Moore NBA podcast. We are brought to you by Prize Picks, coming a late Monday night after Game 4 of the Western Conference Finals. I got Britt, Robson, Kyle Theige here with me. I guess we got our first really good basketball game of this series. Honestly, one of the better just overall basketball games the Wolves have played this entire postseason. Final score is Wolves 126, Thunder 128. We just left the press conferences, just left the locker room, and the number one thing every one of the players, Finch, talked about afterwards, Britt, was losing the possession battle.
Right.
They gave up 19 offensive rebounds, or the Thunder had 19 offensive rebounds, plus the Wolves turned it over 22 times. And as great as the Wolves offense was for tonight, it seemed, at least what the players were saying, but to me too, that gap of not being able to just have as many possessions as your opponent seemed huge. What about that stood out most to you?
Well, I think you're going to look at it two ways. I mean, clearly, if you have 11 more shots taken by your opponent than you and you lose by 2, then the obvious math of that is that's a huge factor. What I found interesting is that one of the things that's most beneficial about offensive rebounds is second chance points, obviously. And one of the most beneficial things about turnovers is points off turnovers. Mm-hmm. And the Wolves won both of those battles.
Right.
They had more second chance points by 6 over the Thunder, 30-24. And when it came to points off turnovers, they had 25 to the Thunder's 22. So I get the logic of it, and I actually don't think that that's disqualifying. Those stats aren't disqualifying to that being a factor. But I think that as important to me was the way that the Thunder defense kind of dictated the way the Wolves would play offense versus the way the Wolves defense could not dictate the way the Thunder played offense.
I thought the defense was huge too, and we'll get it, maybe spend more time on that specifically. But Kyle, was that to you the possession battle? What was, you're right here afterwards, and the Wolves lost because of X?
This is gonna be pretty rudimentary, which is actually a big word for me, by the way. You're inspiring me, Britt. OKC had 19 offensive rebounds and 17 defensive rebounds. And the rudimentary part of that is that defensive rebounds are when you force your opponent to miss a shot. And the Wolves didn't miss a ton of shots. Offensively, I thought they were humming. Obviously, we'll get into Ant and Julius. They were not part of that humming, but that was the best bench game the Wolves have gotten all playoffs. And that didn't matter because I think OKC ended up taking 95 shots. The Wolves had 84. In the third quarter, with about 7 minutes left in the third, they'd taken 23 more shots at that point than the Wolves had. And we always talk about math, right? And more of like 3s versus 2s. Sometimes the math is just if you turn the ball over 21 times and you give up 19 offensive rebounds. I mean, they put up 126 against the defense that all week I've been told is one of the best defenses ever. And it didn't matter because you gave up just too many second, third chance. And every time OKC needed a big shot, they hit it.
It's interesting that those are the really deflating plays in basketball, right? It's just you turn the ball over, deflate. You give up an offensive rebound, deflating. So you have those things there. Plus, you have your 2-star players combined to score 21 points.
Exactly.
Your number 2 options score 5. And look there too. That's deflating.
Yes.
So now you put all those things together. It is kind of crazy that the Wolves lose this game to the best team in the NBA, one of the best teams in the NBA during the regular season. It was a weird game in that sense.
I'll tell you another thing is deflating, and part of this, of course, is the Wolves' fault, as is the turnovers and the offensive rebounds. But whenever they got a big bucket, it seemed every single time they cut it to 1 or the Thunder would just stroll down and hit one back. I mean, there wasn't a lot of it was a ground battle. It was a stalemate, war in the trenches. You got a bucket, I get a bucket.
Yeah.
It wasn't even necessarily I guess it was trading buckets, but it felt like the Wolves kept on trying to climb out of a hole, and it was always just they could see above the hole, but they could never climb out of it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like just, I mean, I know you didn't mean like that, but they didn't just walk into some of these points. I think back when I think of this game years down the road, I'll think of Shea, the perfect defense. He's on the ground and he throws the ball between someone's legs to J-Dub, who hits a 3. Like, just those types of plays are like the third. I mean, it wasn't just one or two offensive road. There was like possessions where OKC had 4 shots, and that's how you kind of built up. And I thought the Wolves, again, we'll get into it, but I thought the Wolves overall played awesome offensively, and it was just still not enough against what was kind of like that was like a championship moment for a team like OKC that has heard all the J-Dub stuff. I mean, that was his best game in a game that should have been the Nickeil Alexander-Walker game.
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, J-Dub he scored his 15th point 30 seconds into the second quarter.
Yep.
And then Mike Conley has that stop on Williams, and he just doesn't score again the rest of the half. I'm pretty sure J-Dub had 15 at the end of the half. And so you're like, okay, that one's coming back. J-Dub's now back at the Julius Randle level.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, second half, Ant's going to do his assert himself and catch up to SGA or whatever it is. And that never happened for the Wolves. Well, Britt, we were sitting there next to each other the whole time, and we're kind of like, does Ant need to be more aggressive? Does Ant not need to be more aggressive? And because the Wolves offense was great tonight and all the surrounding pieces were there. What did you just make of Ant's game and Julius's, and I guess kind of in the context of what J-Dub and SGA were doing?
Well, I'll defer to Finch on this because I was really curious to hear how he would take it. He said that Ant lagged in the first half, but he was really pleased by the way Ant played in the second half. And he pretty much dismissed Julius's play as a bad night and said that's why he played other people, which is a pretty strong thing to just come out and say. But I mean, it's the way, it's their relationship, it's the way it is. But in general of what you're saying, I mean, the whole idea, the Wolves are built around take what they give you, and they shot 51.2%, 43.9 from three. So that's an effective field goal percentage over 60. And you put up 126 against the best defense in the NBA. It's hard to criticize. On the other hand, again, it's what's weird about this game is you have like 2 ways to look at things. The Wolves, one of the reasons that everybody praised Julius Randle coming in is because the Wolves had a second bucket getter. Ant is a bucket getter. Julius Randle is a bucket getter. Well, they combined for 21 points, and SGA and Jalen Williams combined for 74. And so you would think, okay, but they're making the right play. They're getting off the ball and everything, right? Well, in addition to scoring 74 points, J-Dub and SGA had 15 of the Thunder's 22 assists and only 7 turnovers.
Yeah.
Ant and Randle combined for 9 assists and 10 turnovers. So it wasn't like they were brilliantly getting off the ball, and it wasn't like they were getting off the ball sharp in ways that didn't turn the ball over. And this is what I mean about the Thunder defense being able to dictate more, because not only did they force the ball out of Randle and Ant's hands, but they made them turn it over more than they gave them dimes.
I think we should make a distinction between Ant and Randle.
I
did like Ant's process, and when
you should also differentiate between Ant offensively and Ant defensively.
Right, Ant offensively and Ant defensively. Yeah, I just you're being guarded by Lou Dort as your primary or Alex Caruso as your primary, and the other one's there for help.
Yep, I know.
And then Hartenstein's rotated over to be there for a third guy if somehow Ant solves step 1 and 2 of that, as difficult as it gets Maze. And I thought I was pleased by Ant's effective patience. Like he talked about lagging behind a little bit of running the floor with them to get into actions like as soon as you cross half court. Sure. But Ant is never extremely precise offensively. So that didn't stand out to me. What stood out to me was thinking about the kid who, when they played the Celtics and the Thunder at the very beginning of January, was upset about getting double teamed and teams constructing defenses to take that away, even though they won. He got mad after the Celtics game. One of those games that they won the game, and he was frustrated with how that felt. I asked him about that in the locker room after the game, sitting in that same seat that he did, 5 months ago, and he said, "I did not think I struggled. I thought I was making the right play consistently over the course of the night, and I would co-sign that."
And I agree with all of that, but I also think that's because what a great defense gave him as options. They gave him the option of shooting 5 for 13, 1 for 7 from deep, getting 6 assists, but 5 turnovers. I mean, that's not a great night, especially for a star player. And so that's because it isn't that Ant made bad decisions, and it isn't even necessarily that Ant executed badly. It's that, as you pointed out, they had ace defenders who single teamed, then double teamed, and had gap if that didn't work.
I got to talk to Mike in the locker room because there wasn't many people in there because everyone went to the podium. Mike said the exact same thing. Like defensively, he was like, there was just too many things. You can't win in the Western Conference Finals, giving up backdoor cuts and second and third chances. But then Jace asked him, like, what do you think about Ant offensively? He only finishes with 15 points. And Mike goes, I thought he took everything that they threw him and made the right play almost every time.
I think that is, and that's a distinction to make because and Randle's this is his second bad game of the playoffs, maybe 2.5 bad games of the playoffs. But Julius had a really bad game. Yeah, he was really out of rhythm. It got to the point in the second half where he did get a touch and even just taking the shot, and it was so out of rhythm. He was out of his own rhythm there, and so I say that to mean that I think if you get that Ant performance, given how much the Thunder's defense was trying to dictate how Ant was going to have to play, and you get a B- Julius Randle game, I think this is fine. And because a B- Julius Randle game is probably fewer turnovers from Julius Randle, and then in turn fewer turnovers from the group,
more than 2 points,
and then maybe more offensive, or fewer offensive rebounds if he's more engaged, he's on the glass. And when we were, I don't know if you could hear when we were in the scrum there talking to him, but he was frustrated with himself. Julius was about. He kept saying, "I felt like a bystander. I kept felt I was a spectator," was what he was saying, and I needed to find more ways to include myself. And I think if he finds any of the answers to that in this game, they win that game. He does know how to do that. He's been doing that in this series. He's been doing that throughout the postseason. But frankly, tonight they needed that. Right. And they got everything else from pretty much all the other role. Jaden had a great game. We can talk about the bench, all that. But I think it's okay to be frustrated with Julius Randle tonight because Julius Randle is frustrated with himself.
Absolutely. And by the way, just quick before Kyle jumps in, stand-up guy, first guy to talk to the media. Yeah. Tough night on a really big game, and sat there and took it.
He did.
I just being around these guys and like after these games, like the concept of being in a rhythm, I think is so kind of head in the clouds. But then you talk to them like, what does that mean? And they really explain it to you. And I think with Julius, you could just kind of tell midway through the second, third. I mean, there was one where they had called a timeout and they ran a play for Julius. He immediately traveled. Like he was just doing all this weird stuff. And then the one that really stands out to me was the Wolves had fought back at the end of the third. There's like a 3 second differential, and Ant throws it to Julius at the top. There's 18 seconds left. And he takes that 3 and ends up getting Shea an extra bucket. They think he gets a 2 with like 1 second left. They lose by 2. Just like there were so many little details. And Julius has been great, like you said, for what now? 12 and a half of the playoff games.
Great at the little details, which is typically his weakness.
That was the detail. It's like, I know you're open and I know you're down 3 and you want to just make the roof explode, but like hold that because the possessions, right? You don't want to give OKC another possession, which was the theme of this game. You give them another possession. Shea hits a bucket. They're up 5 at the end of the fourth and they win by 2.
I felt like they missed him defensively too. I think that's some of the little things there as well. And I would note Ant too was guarding J-Dub in the first quarter when he was going there. And it was defensively, I think, was a theme of the night. But from those two guys, if it is going to be 21 points and we combined and we kind of understand, at least for the Ant part, why it was lower, then I remember when I was saying at halftime, it's like, okay, Julius is out of rhythm, but then I need everything else, Right. And that's just the difference. If they did a little bit of anything else, Britt, from those guys, and Julius in particular, and I think this is a different result.
Yeah, and I guess this is kind of a cliche, but it is human nature. The Thunder got really embarrassed the other night. I mean, they got waxed, and they're a really good team, and they're also machine-like. A flaw, let's fix it and move on. And they fixed their flaws and they came out, and you could tell within the first 4 or 5 minutes of the game that they were going to be different on defense and they were going to be more purposeful on offense. They just felt like a team that wasn't up 2-0 anymore. And it made a difference. And I think that on the other side of the ledger, I think the Wolves, you can gear yourself up for being ready, but there's a difference between being down 0-2 and having just beaten a team by 40 points.
Yeah.
And I think just those minor attitudinal differences that you don't even know you're internalizing also played a role.
Kyle, do you have anything? I want to do bench next. Do you have anything, close the loop on that?
No, I just randomly found this stat, and I just want to throw it out there in case we forget, because I think it's crazy. 3-1 OKC as they're going back home to what everyone has told me is the loudest arena in the league. But through 4 games of the 2025 Western Conference Finals, the score is Oklahoma City 461, Minnesota 460.
That's crazy. All right, let's grab our first break. Then we got to talk about Nickeil and Dante really, bouncing back in a big way. Today's show is brought to you by Your Home Improvement Company. And, summer's here, and it's maybe an easier time to get a home improvement project done. If you have a need for new windows, they have triple pane windows, buy 2, get 2 free. They have the bathroom renovation deal that we've been telling you about, 30% off bathroom renovations. But really, we always mention those things because that's what they have going right now. But if you have any sort of home improvement project this summer, I would love if you connected with Your Home Improvement Company. Zero money. They have great financing deals where it's 0 money down, 0 interest, and 0 payments until 2026. So if you have that project, get it started. And you can do that by contacting them at 866-777-YHIC, or you can go and learn more at yourhomeimprovementco.com. Your Home Improvement Company, where it's your home made better. Today's show is also brought to you by Prize Picks. Kyle, we were playing Prize Picks last night for Knicks Pacers, and that's the perfect thing for it. It's like we did the live show, we went out and got some beers, and we were like, all right, I
was hammered at Runyon's yelling for Josh Hart to get one more rebound, which
did,
he almost tore his ACL, but he did it, and Josh showed a lot of heart.
It is a fun thing to do, I think, particularly for these players, and particularly in a series. We were talking about some for the Wolves game tonight too. I was like, oh, is it going to be more Isaiah Joe tonight? Is Hartenstein going to be less? And those, I think that's what's fun to do in these series, is kind of track the progressions or fallings of different players, or almost guess who's going to play or not play. Put together a Prize Picks daily fantasy lineup at prizepicks.com, or the Prize Picks app tomorrow for Knicks Pacers game 4, which should just be an awesome basketball game they're going to be watching no matter what. If you do not have a Prize Picks account, you can sign up again at prizepicks.com or the Prize Picks app. Use the promo code Dane, and your account will be credited with $50 when you place your first $5 lineup. All right, let's do the encouraging stuff. I mean, the bench has been a theme sucking, pretty much the entire postseason. And, Dante has struggled with his shot. He was a huge part of why they were in this game in the second half. He was 5 of 8 from 3, had 21 points off the bench. But the dude off the bench tonight was Nickeil-Alexander Walker. I mean, he leads the Wolves in scoring. And I think he played, there's some offense, defense subs in and out, but he checked into the game 4.5 minutes into the third quarter, and then played the rest of the way, leading the team in scoring, guarding Shai Gilgeous-Alexander,
playing point guard, getting rebounds, pumping up the crowd, serving beer, everything.
It was, I don't know. There's just, in general, it's pleasing to watch a player who has grown, but also struggled, and kind of find that rhythm. I mean, that's what we're talking about in a big, big way. This is the Nickeil-Alexander Walker game. If they're able to have a couple fewer turnovers or offensive rebounds, or Randle or Ant are able to put in a couple more points, Nickeil absolutely, delivered on what they needed to start with him, Britt.
Yeah, I think that, first of all, you just root for the guy because he wears his heart on his sleeve. He tells you exactly what's in his mind and in his heart all the time. And he's so honest about himself, and he's obviously very hard on himself. You can see it happen. And you can also see how he's matured to the point where he knows when he's getting too down on himself, and he starts to trying to resurrect himself. But I do think that from the jump tonight, he was ready. He was playing like Nah that was the most consistent player of their first 7/8 of the season.
Right.
He hit some threes that were big threes and did not hesitate. And it's always a good thing when he doesn't hesitate on those threes. Then he got a couple of twos the hard way. I only remember one really bad turnover when he kind of stumbled into Randle and made a travel or something. It was just a dumb turnover.
And that was his only turnover.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah.
And so he just really, and then guarding. Can he guard Shea as good as Jaden? No, but he guards Shea really pretty good. I mean, he would be on 80% of the NBA teams. He would be the guy assigned to guard Shea.
Yeah, at least 80.
And so, we go over and over and over it. If you do the math and the salary cap and the rotations and who's, replaceable, quote unquote, then, we could be looking at some of his last games in a Timberwolves uniform, which makes the other thing kind of bittersweet about this.
Right.
But he had a fantastic game. Your heart gladdens when you see him playing that well, and he does this little Boy Scout salute whenever he hits that 3-pointer.
I'm not sure if it's a Boy Scout, but I know what you're talking about.
I know, but it kind of looks like it,
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah, I'll cede the mic to Kyle.
No, I mean, I had the same thought you did. Shout out to YHIC, your home improvement. I was talking to Steve a little before, and he's like, big picture, like, what do you think about this offseason? I was like, we're not doing that yet, but like, when you look at what the Wolves face this offseason, we'll do all the pods. It's like probably going to lose someone, right? Like, that's just how the numbers work. And if this was Nikhil's last game at Target Center, I mean, he went out with an absolute bang for a guy that little over 2 years ago was acquired as a throw-in, right? I mean, he was pretty much on death's door of NBA career, where it's like, if this doesn't go well for me, I am a Shanghai Shark. And he not only has been as good as Mike over these last couple of years, there's been nights where he's just been, and he was their most important player. And he did everything for them. And like you said, he can't guard Shea the way Jaden can because he just doesn't have the length. But he can pretty much all he doesn't have. I mean, he had that, I thought, a perfect block. It was a foul, but he did wear his heart on his sleeve tonight. Not only did he play well and get some rebounds and hit 5 for 8 from 3, he also, every dead ball or timeout, like, he was just kind of getting the crowd going. And it was another awesome crowd tonight. But if for some reason down 3-1, that is Nikhil's last game at Target, so I thought that was a really cool moment for him, because he is, I've always said this too, like, he's one of my favorite people to ever talk to. He just is a really honest person who loves books.
Did you guys feel like Mike should have played more?
No.
I think that the problem wasn't the offense necessarily. So I don't necessarily. I think that you said at halftime it might be a really good Mike Conley second half, and you would have been right if he hit his shots, because he had
or played.
No, but I mean, there was a period of time where I think he lasted like 6 minutes into the third quarter, and he had, I think, 3 shots, and he made one of them. But if he had made those other 2 or one of those other 2, it's one of those fine lines where I think it's gotten to the point where if Mike Conley can hit his shots and be aggressive and force the issue, and at the same time be the no turnover guy and the poise setting guy.
That's why I brought it up.
That is what enables him to play. And I think, again, as has been kind of a quasi theme in these playoffs, his shot wasn't there.
I was just going to say, if J-Dub doesn't have his game and the OKC wins, like, it's a J-Dub game, but then it's the Nickeil Walker game if the Wolves win. And if Nickeil doesn't play like that, it is the Dante DiVincenzo game. And to your point, like, I'm just thinking right after the game, like, Nickeil and Dante had to play, and Ant probably just need to keep out there, and you have to have Jaden out there because he's so then. But so like, you playing Jaden at the 5, because now I'm starting to like come to your side, but like, that's a really small lineup that they've probably never played. With Ant at the 4.
I just like thinking about it from you now added a 9th guy to the rotation, and this was the whole conundrum all year. The counter argument, and which was Finch's argument for not playing a 9th guy, was to play the 8 guys a lot.
I asked him about that before the game. He did not want any part.
Yeah, because it's hard. It's just it is tricky, and it's why, Kyle, we argued about it over the course of the season, and there was different times where I felt
We were both
strong
right,
in
yeah,
it,
yeah.
and I felt poorly about it. It's just been a fascinating roster from that standpoint of your
The
starting point guard
starting
plays like 20. Yeah, the starting 8, and then those guys play really well. And TJ, included here in the bench part of it. But it's just there is the opportunity cost of playing those guys more. And I think, you're looking at the reason for the loss being, giving up offensive rebounds and turnovers. Mike is the best ball control player on this team. He's the one guy who's, when he's bringing it up and he's picked up by Casey Wallace or whatever, you go, I'm pretty sure you're just going to get this over and you're going to get them into offense. Right. Whereas, like you said, Nikhil, only one turnover. I think it hits on like this broader theme and also like of just the roster having some incongruencies.
Right.
Even though it's for another good thing. And Dante and Nikhil played well. And Terrence definitely should have played the 9 minutes or whatever he did because it was helpful there. I do just sit here after the fact in a game that was lost on the margins, and Mike is the most marginally corrective sort of guy on the team. I get why he didn't play.
I was just thinking like we said this yesterday, I think during the live show. I was like, you're gonna get, I think, a Dante like 6 for 10 from 3. You get 5 for 8 tonight.
Yeah.
Dante and Nikhil give you 44 points. So when I snapped back and said no, Mike shouldn't have played, it's because if those two guys are playing like that, you got to keep Ant out there. And now you're like, what else are you going to do? You got to have another defender. You got to have a big. So I can't imagine playing Mike, Dante, Nikhil, Ant, and Jaden and getting rebounds. Right. But to your point about controlling the ball, I just think they needed offense and they needed size. And it was nothing Mike did wrong. It's just, it was a numbers game tonight for him. And like those other two guys just played way, way better. I'm
probably thinking about the numbers of it a little bit too much of the turnover total. And then also, Mike, if you do game 1, game 2, and game 4, he's plus 21 in the minutes he's been on the floor, and the Wolves are minus 64 in the minutes that he's been off the floor.
And tonight, I mean, Nikhil plus 6, Mike plus 4, Rudy plus 2, and those are the pluses on the team. I mean, it's always a weird thing to look at that because it sometimes bears a great relationship to reality and sometimes none at all.
And this one was somewhere in the middle of that. I'm not sure that plus 21 minus 64 is too high.
Your point about Mike Conley is that last season and the half season before, he was extremely valuable because he calmed things down. He organized things. He was the unquestioned floor general, and sometimes obviously ran the offense, but he was the floor general, and he hit shots. And he does all that now, except he's not as much of a floor general because he not only has Ant in front of him, but he has Randle in front of him now in terms of playmaking, and he's not hitting his shots. As good as he was in the second half of the regular season, I don't know what he is in these playoffs, but I don't remember a lot of Mike Conley scorched from outside tonight. That just hasn't happened. And tonight,
2 for 5,
and 0 for 3 from 2.
I've kind of been, you've said that a lot. I'm not sure I agree. Like with the shooting, I just, it's kind of like Dante, where I know he's a great shooter, and right. It hasn't been great for Mike. And then the floater stuff is what bothers me more. I think a lot of his misses are the grenades and stuff that he's gotten. I agree. Over apologizing for him. It was something because I said that to you and I was take committed, the rest of the way. Well, but I kept feeling like,
And again, I don't think it was wrong. I think again, Chris Finch would have liked nothing better than for Mike Conley to clean a couple of threes up, and just bang, bang. And I think he would have kept him in a little longer. As it turned out, hindsight being 2020, it is very difficult to imagine Mike Conley playing better in that fourth quarter than DDV.
Yeah.
The thing about Dante is when Dante's hitting his shots and he's really in the Dante groove, he's also disruptive as shit. I mean, he's basically getting rebounds that he has no business getting. He's going all or nothing on fouling, and not getting fouls, instinctively being kind of Lou Dortish in terms of disrupting somebody. And he started to find that groove. And I mean, the media on media row there, and when last shot, who should take it? I think most of the table, DDV probably was the guy,
Mhm.
and then Naw had his game, but it is very difficult for me to blanketly criticize Mike Conley because he's always better than what the stat sheet says he is.
Right.
Unless the stat sheet says he's plus 60.
Yeah. The defense. I struggled with the defense tonight. I think they were you can have all the turnovers and even the offensive rebounds. And I think particularly in the first half, just a higher level of locked inness. There was just a bunch in the second quarter. I remember I just kept writing down another cross match. And no one knows who they're guarding, or a second late on the rotation over. And this team has really in the postseason fought this battle, and it's gone both different ways where, all right, this is sweet. Nas can come in at the 5 and you have this offensive versatility that you love to have, but you don't have Rudy out on the floor. And then you don't have the same level of defense. You don't have that little bit of a mitigating factor of his presence on, a Shai Gilgeous-Alexander attack or Jalen Williams attack there. He's been a weird variable in this whole postseason for the Wolves. Rudy has, and I'm not saying he's acquitted himself great, but he's lost some of his primacy on this team, certainly in the postseason, which is deserved because the offense has not been there. But defensively, this team is used to having a little bit of a defensive floor, or when they're rolling on offense, as they were tonight, some of the stars or just the players, they get into a little bit of like, all right, we're scoring, they're scoring, we can score because they're scoring. And Rudy never gets into that sort of snowball rolling down the hill. He's locked in about what the defense was. And it would be nice at any point during this postseason where you could be like, all right, Rudy's out there to help the defense and he's not hurting the offense either. I just felt like they needed to have the offense that they had, but a little bit more defensive Rudy. But that's the conundrum, Kyle, right? Of like, are those two things simultaneously possible?
Rudy Gobert's play in this series has made me already a pro Finch guy just kind of love Finch more because it has to be like such a fucking dilemma. I think it was like I wrote down in the third quarter when Gobert was on, OKC was 2 for 6 at the rim. And then when Gobert was off, they were 8 for 8 at the rim, right? 5 of Rudy's teammates had more defensive rebounds tonight than he did. Rudy had, I think, 7 of his 9 rebounds were offensive. As good as he is defensively, and I don't think that's slipped because, again, the numbers at the rim kind of show you, as Jim Pete has always told us, like, good defense isn't just forcing tough shots. Like, defense ends when you get the ball. Yeah. And they just didn't get the ball tonight enough. And, how do you not have shades of thinking of that Grizzlies series where you get out rebounded and you lose a bunch of games that you should have won? I mean, there's so many weird
Which
stats.
Is literally what Rudy was
acquired to do. It's like we couldn't rebound. Tim Conley comes in. Let's go get a really good rebounder. And now we've fixed that. And for him to, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say he's washed or over the hill over 4 games, but this has been a really tough series for him in all 4 games. And I just don't he had 13 points tonight. He did have that really nice kind of dunk on Hartenstein, but they need his rebounding, even though his never minds are always still there and his rim protection. But tonight, I mean, one of the big themes was just that they couldn't get, after they played really good defense, they couldn't get the ball. And that just led to so many more opportunities for OKC.
The issue is reach and recovery. Rudy is a great instinctual helper, and he likes to trust his teammates. And there's always going to be that debate as to the fact that Rudy made his living as a drop defender for a long time, and Utah built their entire system on it. And now he is a roamer much more than he used to be, a roamer and a recoverer. When you have a team like the Thunder, how much of it is Gobert's responsibility if he's helping out on somebody to alter a shot to then get the offensive rebound, and how much is it that other people need to be backfilling? I'd say tonight it went about 50-50, quite frankly. There were at least a couple of times where I thought Rudy if he had the awareness, if he'd been able to like shift immediately from stop the shot to get the rebound, he might have made a little bit quicker reaction. But I also saw his teammates. Dante DiVincenzo goes for the ball. Mike Conley goes for the ball. Jaden McDaniels, to some extent, usually goes for the ball if he's not in a position of being wing. But I don't think Randle or Ant are really go get that defensive rebound that's kind of lying around. And that's too bad. I think that was one of the things, one of those little things that they keep talking about. When a ball is nobody's rebound because everybody is locked in, because the Wolves got a lot of offensive rebounds and second chance points tonight too. It was that kind of a game where your first priority was to stop the points. And then your second priority was to get the rebound. And they were so intent on stopping the points that the rebounds kind of get left behind. But the Thunder had more scrappy guys to get those second rebounds. And offensively and defensively. I mean, there were some defensive rebounds to be collected. So I blame Rudy some of that. I agree with Kyle, but I also think that this team, one of the ways that we saw them really snap into form in game 3 that wasn't there in game 4 was cleaning the boards. They were 50-31 in game 3 on the boards, plus 19. And that wasn't there tonight.
Yeah, I brought up the defense because I was frustrated with the defense when Rudy wasn't out there, because there was problems in that. But I think God, we're talking about this because I'm just doing the thing where I'm like, it's like Dante's a good shooter. Oh, Rudy's a good defender. So if he would have been out there more, it would have been more good defense. Right. That isn't always, I guess 100% true, because look at his line and he has 13 and 9 tonight. Rudy, 2 of those 9 were defensive rebounds. Right. His 7 offensive rebounds.
But how many did he never mind, and how many did he make them miss?
I don't know.
I mean, I know. No, but what I'm saying is it's always that's the Gobert equation, right? I mean, it's also like with Ant, we just got through talking about, all right, he didn't make these shots, but he created shots for others because he was drawing people to him, etc. Rudy was denying shots. He wasn't there to get the offensive rebounds. And quite frankly, I think when Rudy Gobert is too old, that will be the thing that will make people put him down, is that, he's doesn't get the defensive rebound, and people are getting offensive rebounds behind him. That's happening a little bit more than it did in previous years. And again, I don't know if a lot of it is. Yeah, I think it is.
You think? I still think Rudy's like an elite. I mean, tonight, I don't know. I mean, I always just, with Rudy, for me, it's like if and when it falls off, it's because the offense has not gotten any better, and because he, defensively, that's maybe he loses a little bit defensively, and he goes from A+ defender to A-, and then you're like, okay, with the D- offense, how does that?
But,
how does that all
do you
shake
remember
out?
before he got his back spasms, how his rebounding was way down?
Yeah.
And I think some of that has to do with his quickness, I think, on the boards, for lack of a better word. I mean, his lack of athleticism, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I guess I don't know. I just think my biggest thing to it is they are such a different defensive team when he's out there.
Argument there.
Than when he's not.
Rudy Gobert will always be, not always, but has been for many, many years now, the floor of a Gobert-led defense is top 10 in the NBA.
Right.
And that's a hell of a statement to make about somebody. He was an All-NBA second-team defender for a reason.
This is the most Kyle stat of all time, but Rudy had double-digit rebounds in 8 of 15 playoff games last year. He's had double-digit rebounds in 4 of 14 playoff games this year. So again, what does that really mean? All I know is you said.
No, I mean, you're right. It's fewer minutes.
Right. There's a lot of noise in there, but for me and how my brain works, I love a stat that confirms what I see.
Right.
But you asked me, what do you think about the defense? Dude, the Wolves have scored 269 points in 51 hours against what everyone has said is the best defense maybe ever, the best modern defense ever, right? Their defense is why they lost the game. Dude, they're scoring like crazy. They're offensively tonight. Again, you don't get anything from Julius. You still score 126 against this awesome defense because you just relied on the 8 starters. The fact that it wasn't just like the rebounding, right? Like how many times did you see little back cuts or just the little, we were talking on the walk over here. The thing that will end up probably being this team's Achilles heel is just they don't always have the attention to detail. And OKC tonight had every attention to detail on every single possession. OKC's coaches, like, or I guess the compliment is like, Daigneault always has those guys like micromanaging certain possessions. The Wolves just don't do that. They are a little more free flowing, not in a bad way. Again, they scored 269 points this weekend, but they just couldn't get timely rebounds. They couldn't get timely stops. And when they did get timely stops, they couldn't get timely rebounds, which led to second and third opportunities.
It's a fascinating game that both of these teams would say, the players would say, our identity is defense. I mean, it's 128, 126. I mean,
there was
offensive
a lot
ratings.
of really good shot making too.
Yeah. I mean,
people are hitting tough shots.
OKC's offensive rating is 135 and the Wolves is 133. That is elite. Those teams have probably done that 5 or 10 times over the course of the entire season in a game. And so that's a weird thing in basketball when it's like you can't fall back onto your laurels of what you are for both of those teams.
Right.
And that's what made this game about the margins, and it made it about the turnovers, and it made it about the offensive rebounds. And it was 19 offensive rebounds each side of it. It was the turnovers. And that was just, I mean, we talked about it over and over and over again before the series. We knew that's what this was going to be. We knew that, and we know, and we could spin forward to game 5. We know, like, if the Wolves control the ball, like, I'd be shocked if the Wolves lost a game in this series and had single-digit turnover or less than 13 turnovers, right? There's they don't have this margin for error because their defense is not better than the opposing team's defense, and that's a difference than a lot of these other playoff series that they played over the past 2 seasons. They were the better defense, or not the better defense in this series. Now, that doesn't mean they can't beat them. That doesn't mean they can't win games, but they have to win the games on the margins. They have to be meticulous, like you were saying, Kyle. Like, there's no room. This Thunder team's too good, and they have to. That is one element of Game 5 that has to happen if they're going to be able to extend this. Where are you just at it? Like, what you're feeling going into Game 5, what needs to happen in Game 5, and for a team who has been the underdog, all those like sort of cliches, like. Does this feel like the rope has slipped out of their hands, or can they, get it back in OKC, a difficult environment?
I thought they'd win Game 3, and they kind of did. And I do think this is a weird team that, we talk about this all the time. Like, when you think they're going to zig, they zag, and vice versa. So, like, do I think it's over? No. But I also think, and I would be really curious because I think the 3 of us have done a really good job of like not really leaning into this. I did think officiating broke them tonight. Like, I thought tonight you saw more bad body language after, again, like, I'm not even sure how many of the fouls are bad. There was a couple Shea ones where he falls down. It's kind of what he does. But I thought tonight the whistle, maybe you disagree. Like, I thought the whistle kind of got into their head a little bit tonight as they're trying to push that rock. What was it? Jim's guy uphill. It just seemed like it got into them a little bit. And again, we'll see what the whistle's like, whatever. They didn't lose because of the officiating. But I thought tonight that was like, time after time to see your player get called one way and their player get called another way. I think tonight you could kind of see that on there. That's why I thought Gilgeous-Randle was not in rhythm. I thought mentally he was checked out because he was getting called for fouls. He's like, I don't get called for that.
Which is what happened in Game 2 as well, when Julius got benched for the 4th quarter. In the 3rd quarter, you could just his frustration in that game, I'm remembering correctly, was he was having a lot of frustration of not getting. They weren't calling fouls for him to get to the free throw line. You know, and you're right. You're right. It is. Whatever we think of the calls or not, this team is being dislodged by when the whistle isn't very, very much going in their direction or allowing for like greater overall physical play, as was indicated by Game 3. They were the more physical team. It didn't bother them, but it goes back to the margins, right? But it's another thing where there isn't any time to complain.
It's a sign of immaturity, and I thought the Thunder got a terrible whistle in Game 3.
Sure.
I thought Shea got mugged a few times, and and he also had some plays where he had gotten the call all the other previous games, and he didn't get the call, and he had to adjust to that. And I think it affected their play, and I think it threw them way out of rhythm. In fact, I think that was one of the first things I said when we had that immediate reaction on game 3 is they really were physical and took the Thunder out of their game. Well, pregame game 4, Dagnall said tonight, all we ask about the officiating is that it's fair. That if it's more whistles, less whistles.
Weaponize the media.
If it's more whistles or less whistles. But what he said was what happened to us in game 3 didn't have anything to do with the officiating. He said that this is, we did things wrong that we shouldn't have done, and we'll do better tonight. That is the attitude that needs to be set for any team playing big games, because guess what? Even if you go to court and Your Honor, this play and this play and this play are wrong,
Right.
Everybody goes, okay, well, congratulations. Here, we'll put it on the 2-minute report and put a sticker on your forehead. I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if you make it matter during the game,
Right.
you're being immature.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Nothing wrong with that. But I will say, as a basketball fan, as we watch it, whether it be on TV or in person or whatever, that we haven't really broken down the element of this yet. Of like, Ant picks up Shea full court, and Shea gets in the middle, and he bumps off Ant and falls down, and it's a foul, whatever. But then, like, when Ant puts his head down and he drives, and Dort is so good defensively, but Ant kind of like drives and bounces off him. Ant just regains his, like, he bounces a little bit, and then he's back, right? It's like when you see at a football game when they have those two guys in the big bubble suits that run at each other. When Shea gets hit, he falls down. When Ant gets hit, he kind of bounces back and goes again. That, Britt said nothing wrong. But at some point, maybe it's just for Ant, that has to drive you fucking crazy.
Right.
But game 3, what kind of collision did Ant make with Lou Dort when he stole that ball?
For sure. And
I heard the collision in my shoulders.
Sounded like a scooter getting hit by a car.
And strolled down for a layup, no whistle. That was early in the game. So I get what you're saying. All I know is it's human nature to be a fan of a team and remember the things that you get screwed on a lot more than you remember the things that just happen to go your way. It's part of the fun of being a fan. It's how you're invested in your team. And I don't begrudge fans wanting, howling for that, but the team itself has to be not in martyrdom mode. Martyrdom is a bad way to play because you're not in your groove. A martyr's groove is a loser's groove. And it doesn't usually work. I can't think of many teams that are grumbling about the officials and winning the game.
You're being mature. I'm being immature, but I'm just saying that.
I don't begrudge fans being immature. I begrudge a team that wants to win the game being immature because it doesn't further their goal.
I have a begrudge, and I mean, you guys know this, probably listeners who. I don't like the officiating conversation. We very rarely ever talk about it on here. It's not interesting to me. I think in the long run, these things shake out. But as a basketball fan and watching these games, it is frustrating how much of a storyline it is.
I think that's my thing, is that we have to talk about it at some point or highlight it.
Yeah, it does affect the quality of the product. It affects the fun I have to it. And so does the fouling up 3 thing. And it was a good strategy. And they should do that. And it's why the Wolves didn't ever even really have a chance to come back and win the game. But it is a bummer. I mean, this is the Western Conference Finals. We're sitting there. This is some of the highest level basketball I've ever seen in person. And I'm just frustrated as a fan of the game of how much of the result of the basketball seems to have so little to do with the basketball. And it could be people talking about Shea flopping, sure. And it could be people talking about the Wolves got away with mauling everybody the other time. But I don't know. The end of the game, just selfishly, I would have liked to be able to see these two teams, just kind of play it out. And I don't have suggestions or answers to what that is exactly, but I don't know. I don't fall in love with basketball when I was a kid. I don't remember thinking or feeling this way, and it just seems like something that has just gotten in the way of the game more than I like.
This has nothing to do with Timberwolves Thunder, right? This is just basketball, right? You and I were watching Knicks Pacers last night.
Yeah.
And so again, I want to emphasize that nothing to do with this result, this team, whatever. I wish it was illegal. Like I just, cause like I just hate the concept of it to turn. I mean, some of my favorite memories of basketball are just like buzzer beaters or like,
you're talking about falling down
three or technically falling up three.
Yeah,
I just hate it because it just turns the game into
such,
and I mean, again, I sound like such a loser here, but it's like, I like, not the Kobe dribble out the clock stuff, but like sometimes my favorite memories are buzzer beaters or those types of shots, and to just completely eliminate it in any game, it just kind of like, so now we're going to drag this out and just go free throw. It does kind of.
Well, the problem is that it is a good strategy.
Yeah.
And we would be like, and if the roles were reversed,
so
like, this is really good. They, right. Yeah, that's a good comp. Or the Jaden McDaniels rule from last year and the proximate foul sort of thing. It's like, we know way too many of these words.
Right.
Like, as what happened, just hoops, like that's a problem. That was such a great basketball game, and we haven't hit on that enough. That basketball game deserved a end of the game result, and then the Wolves. I mean, obviously that would have benefited the Wolves, but I just,
And the stakes are high. I mean, it's easy for me to sit back and say, they shouldn't let things affect them. Well, they're down 3-1 now.
Yeah.
And, that's a tough pill. You have to win in OKC twice to win the series. And that's a steep hill that they were staring at. They knew it very well. So I get it, but I'm just saying that, we didn't see a lot of demonstrative argument. I think Hartenstein was probably the most agitated by the refs in Game 3 that I saw. I didn't see a lot out of Shea. I didn't see Lou Dort occasionally had a complaint, but I didn't see it as much as I see. The Wolves are one of the more demonstrative teams against the officials in the NBA. And I just don't think one of the things I can say with confidence is teams that let part of their attention go to calls that have just happened or thinking I'm owed one moving forward they don't play as well. It's just they simply don't play as well.
And it was fascinating to watch tonight because as much as I'm pro Finch, one of the other people that was super demonstrative about the calls was Finch. Yeah. And then you watch Dagnall, and he is a pretty cool cucumber. And again, maybe it's because his team was getting a good whistle, whatever. But like,
gets back to my technocrat theory.
Yeah, but I will say on the following up 3 thing, which OKC. I mean, this was like I was kind of watching this game, and maybe we can at least highlight some of the stuff that OKC did because like multiple guys on their team. I mean, Shea had a career high 10 assists, playoff career high 40 points. J-Dub had a playoff career high 34 points. J-Dub had a playoff career high 6 3-pointers.
Well, it wasn't even a grifty game from him. Like I don't think that I didn't feel so as much. It was a good Shea game.
And I want to get back to the 10 assists quick thing, but on the concept of fouling up 3, I thought Finch did them no favors whatsoever when they were down 3. And some of the they threw the ball in both times to Naz Reid with his back to the basket. There was no OKC is going to do it because they did it in the Denver series and actually cost them a basketball game in Game 1. But I just thought that there could have been way better execution to try to get a guy. They're fouling. They have one to give, and then they're fouling again, like to get a guy moving. But when Naz caught the ball both times, his back was to the basket 30 feet out.
Should have asked one of the players or Finch if what you would do in that situation when you are down by 3 and the team has the opportunity to foul you there, and that's a possibility coming. Are you drawing up 2 separate plays in that?
Rick
huddle
Carlisle draws 4 verts.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like he has his guy start that baseline and run down court.
Right. It's a bummer that didn't.
And Jaden McDaniels slightly besmirched an otherwise beautiful game by going for 2 at a crucial moment when I thought he should have been furthering a play to get 3.
Oh, the one he missed?
Yeah. No, he actually did miss that one, but he
know
made
what
so
you mean,
many.
Yeah.
I just thought he was a little bit too. He was 2-point conscious inside of 2 minutes, and they were down more than 4.
Didn't he hit 2 threes in the final?
He hit
to
two,
go?
yes, but those were
He's been
not
awesome.
plays that he initiated, which kind of furthers my point. If he'd gotten off the ball and repositioned, he might have been able to hit a 3.
What needs to happen in Game 5, Kyle?
I think you got to do what the OKC fans do before the game and probably pray. I don't know. I mean, I one of the things Jace Frederick has done such a good job of covering these playoffs. But when I was talking to Jace, like he told me this morning, like OKC was shooting 27.5% from 3 on the road, right? They're just a completely different team at home. I mentioned those 10 assists for Shea was a playoff career high. 8 of those 10 assists were for 3s, and one of them Chet had his foot on the line. Like OKC, I just thought tonight, I mean, I'm not thinking it's over, but I thought tonight between Daigneault learning how to follow up 3, which was a bugaboo in the last one, and J-Dub in the Denver series was like, is that really a number 2 banana? Like, can you get it? He had his best game. And then Shea, you know, a couple of days after the MVP, like that was the type of game that we always joke about the DVD. If OKC wins this title, like that tonight's game might be the first highlights of like that team really grew up and their big 2, big 3 was just better than Minnesota's. But if you're the Wolves, I mean, Mike Conley said it's a 1-game series now for us. Like we just have to win 1 game at a time. Put some pressure back on them, make them. He said, our goal, make them get on the plane again and come back to Minnesota. And that's all you can do because you can't win the series on Wednesday. You just got to try to, but clean up the turnovers, get more rebounds. And I don't think like you would be like, oh, like a OKC fan, like, well, you're not going to get that shooting performance again from Dante Nikhil. You might, right? But you got to probably go down with the ship of having Julius and Ant be out there a lot and trying to have, like you said, Julius said 12.5 good games, 2.5 bad ones. Kind of bank on Julius trying to close this season out for them on a high note.
Yeah, I mean the 3-point shooting variance argument, whatever. It doesn't. I don't think that has a ton of weight here because the Wolves are 18 of 41 from 3. That's obviously really good. That's 44%. But Oklahoma City was 16 of 37 from 43%. You know, yeah, obviously if one of those teams shits the bed shooting the 3 in Game 5, they're going to lose. What if the other team stays there? But both of these teams have been extremely variable from 3-point range. And I loved what Nikhil said after, I think it was Game 2. He's like, we need to control all the controllables that are outside of the 3-point shooting. And you can actually win without that, as these teams, have highlighted throughout the series or throughout the postseason. I think that's the biggest thing to me, Britt, is like, there are more controllables out there that come with maturity. It's going to require a mature performance, Game 5 in a closeout game in Oklahoma City. I'm fascinated to see how, if your word is pray, Kyle, mine is respond. Can they respond in that environment? And many times when I've questioned this team's ability to respond, where they blow the Bucks game or whatever like that,
right.
And then they do that has, just as much as turnovers have been a pattern of behavior for this team, responding in really off of a really flat performance is something that is in the Wolves this season's DNA for sure.
I think I would be a little bit more purposeful. It is a departure from a season-long trend, a hard-won season-long trend. But I would work in the next 2 days a package to get Ant open a little bit more and just get him
off ball.
Yeah, Mike talked about how.
I think he really needs to see a few go through the hoop early, so that he has that playoff Ant, and obviously the defense has had a lot to do with it at OKC, but playoff Ant. Game 3, we just went, oh, that's right. We've got that guy on our team who wasn't there in Games 1 and Games 2, and he wasn't there tonight, but it wasn't his fault. At the same time, I think one of the ways the Wolves spring what would be an upset to win Game 5 is to get playoff and his foot in the door enough to see if he can put his shoulder in the door and break the whole thing open.
Right.
And
it doesn't seem like OKC's defense is going to allow that. I mean, they stayed steadfast on their coverages of Ant. I mean, I didn't see much adjustment even after Dante's hitting 3s. Nikhil's hitting 3s.
And maybe it is a matter of getting off the ball and hoping that other people draw attention. I mean, they did move Dort over to Julius
Mhm.
after that first half in game 1. And I do think you can try to figure out ways to be diversified in your offense enough to kind of lessen the pressure and then go to Ant hard. But I think then I don't know, quite frankly. You raise a good point that this is an excellent defense and they have multiple ways of doing it. But I think if you don't get a big game from Ant, and maybe a big game is 22, 9, and 8, and it doesn't feel like Ant went off, but it just can't be, as much as I don't blame him tonight for what happened, and I thought he played a good game. I agree with you on that. He can't be taken away.
Mhm.
If you take Ant away in such a big game, I don't think this team operates at full confidence.
It isn't Ant needing to have on those times when he was kicking out or he's driving into the middle and there's 3 OKC defenders. It isn't that you need Ant to be more aggressive in that spot and try to wedge his way through there and get to the rim and score through those guys. What it is let's look at some of the other things that have worked in this series. In game 2, you played through him in the post there. I thought in the beginning of game 3, we saw him play off ball a lot more, coming down off of pin down screens. In game 3, there was a lot more DHO game with Rudy. There was more on ball screening by Rudy. It would be bad if it was just where Ant is sort of prospecting the floor and, looking to take his guy off the dribble and then looking to attack and go through it. Those things, getting out in transition, generating steals. It's those sorts of, those elements exist. So it's what makes this not a bad Ant game. It's if you added some of those other digits in there, then you get a more involved Anthony Edwards on offense game. I think without necessarily eating into the other pieces that played.
And appreciating how difficult that is to even incrementally get that stuff. I would also give him a little more latitude to just shoot a semi-contested 3 and see if he's on that night.
It's tough when they're playing into the ball. I don't think that is possible to be self-create. I don't think it'd be a good idea to try to self-create that. It would be a good idea to get that via pin downs, via screens, via involvement through other players in different ways.
Mike Conley told us post game in the locker room that he thought that was the most the team has ever loaded up at the top against Ant that he could remember. And if you go back and, as you will, rewatch the game tomorrow, I mean, Rudy was setting high screens 3, 4, 5 feet above the 3-point line.
Mhm.
Like they really were like, you're not going to dissect us and get your stuff from here. And
that walk up 3.
Yeah, like the best
screen,
moments of Ant I can remember was him either running a screen roll in the slot or else just being a couple really good backdoor cuts where, I mean, they were pressuring him so much and he's so athletic. Like, can you just cut back door quick?
Mhm.
So I thought that was, I mean, not a huge OKC guy, but like Dagnall has always just thrown some of these crazy things, like in game 7 when they threw all this different stuff at Jokic in game 7. I thought tonight, and Mike kind of echoed this, like they really made it a point to not let Ant get comfortable at the top and push him as far away from the 3-point line as possible, which then makes him, like, to Britt's point, like that has to be one of the best things in game 5 is get him off the ball.
And that's what it's going to look like.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's not gonna, they're not going to do something different.
Yeah.
I mean, they only intensified further what they were doing. I mean, it was because in game 3, Rudy would set that screen, and then if it was a good screen, Ant could 1-2 and to pull up for that.
Right.
Now the gap help guy is there too, and he knows that that's what he's trying to do. I mean, they are just executing that defense so sharply. The defense is designed to take away Ant and make the release valve be the corner 3 that they're leaving open there, or forcing them to get off of it and have somebody else break the paint, which needs to be Julius Randle. And
I was about to say, then, if that's true, and I believe it's true, I hold to my point that sometimes you still let Ant try to break the machine on that a little bit, but lean into Julius and lean into Dante. I think Julius is going to be due for a more comprehensive game than he showed in this last game. And I think Dante is itching for a big game now. I mean, that fourth quarter indicated to me that he can be special in a way like he was for the Knicks last year, and he was in a lot of in December and March, I think were his 2 big months. But I think you need something where the Thunder say, all right, they got points there, but they didn't get them the way we were afraid they're going to get them.
Yeah.
You know, and you need to pierce that. And they got 126 points. I'm not saying this didn't happen tonight, but you need to. The Thunder never felt like they were not in control tonight, I thought.
And I think that's because the Wolves defense was not doing enough to limit them offensively. They would have ceded some of that control, I think, with better execution
and that
from
is
the
a
Wolves defense.
speech Finch needs to make.
Yeah.
That, you know, hey, our defense is our identity, but it isn't just Rudy Gobert at the rim. We need to start digging in. When we dig in and we get into people early, if you want game 3 to be your outlier and lose in 5, then you can say game 3 is your, you know, the thing you look back on. But if you want to win this series, you need to replicate game 3. You know, however it works, I think that all things being equal, the Thunder win game 5. Things have to become less equal.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. What did we miss? Anything?
Yeah, I mean, it sucks to lose a game where Pat Bev has a t-shirt cannon again. If that was a trip. No, I mean, you know, we joke all the time that this is way more fun to do after wins than losses. But I mean, no one loves basketball more than the guy to my left. I thought that was just, again, like for Target Center, again, like this whole playoff run, like that place was so loud every time the Wolves fought back and did try to fully climb out of that hole. But from just a basketball game, right? You don't really care.
I agree. It was a great game.
That was one of the best games I can remember. I mean,
Right.
120 at 126, you can point at that error or that missed rebound. But every time the Thunder also, like, they hit 3 shots. I mean, J-Dub had a couple of them in the fourth where, like, me and Jack Borman are like, that's it, that's game. And then the Wolves would go on a 7-0 run and, like, almost get to the top of that hole before they had more dirt thrown on them. So you never want to hang a banner for losing a game by 2 to what could be the finals champion. But that was just a really good basketball game and a really good weekend of basketball, but just sucks to come out with a split.
And at the end of the day, that's why you're here. People used to ask me, why cover a team that loses 50 to 60 games every year, like 7 years in a row or something? And I said, because it's the NBA. I get to watch the NBA. Well, now I get to say, I get to watch that team go to the NBA finals 2 years in a row and play really high caliber basketball against really good teams and have an organization that actually is respected around the league. It's becoming something where you notice how Tim Connelly, Chris Finch mold this roster and turn it into its own kind of identity. And then you watch that identity go against, you know, a 68-win team that's incredibly young, but incredibly disciplined, and wipe them out one game and come within a bucket of evening up the series in another game. You know, I mean, it's all gravy from here as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, discipline is the common denominator, or the uncommon denominator, I guess, between those two teams.
Yeah.
And that's, I'm not trying to put the Wolves in the grave, but, you know, sometimes you sort of, like you mentioned, the Memphis series, and those are the failings of the series you ultimately lose. Oftentimes, kind of, it's the last thought you have, but it often ends up defining a lot of what the offseason is. And Britt, after every one of these losses, we've been talking about an execution gap, a maturity gap, you know, those sort of things. And there isn't an age gap, you know, so that makes it, you know, something that I think it's fair to ask a little bit more of from this team. Doesn't mean it's a bad team. The incredible shot making on the Wolves side tonight too, but if this series ends and the Thunder come out on top, that's the margin that I think I'll end up.
They're not in the grave, but the doctor is speaking in hushed tones to the relatives.
And when we'll do a game recap after game 5 and maybe they steal it. But like when I left that series last year, I just watched a team from Dallas that was just better than the Timberwolves, right? Yeah. And everyone on Minnesota kind of thought the same thing. And then that team went on to the finals and got absolutely bum rushed by the eventual champions. this one, as great as that game was, I left tonight. Like that one stung. Like if you're a fan, because I think OKC is going to win the series. I mean, they have all the numbers say they will, and they're probably going to win the title, right? And I thought the Wolves showed that they truly had a chance in this series, far more than I thought they had a chance against the Mavs last year in hindsight. And that one's going to sting a little bit. I mean, for Nikhil, like we joked about, like if that was his last game at Target, that they deserved, I thought, to win tonight. And OKC just did everything a little better. And that's what this stuff's all about when you get to the Final Four. It's like who takes care of the little things, the margins, the attention to detail. And that's what the Thunder did to go up 3-1.
Oh, this has been fun, guys. Games 3 and 4, good basketball. And it's been fun to talk about it. I'm heading to OKC tomorrow. Britt, you're not doing.
I'm not doing it. I will not be in the immediate reaction group next
That's
time.
why I said it's all gravy for me. He doesn't have to
Be
go back to
watching it
OKC.
on the big ass TV at home. And,
Yeah, that doesn't sound too bad right now. Kyle and I will do a pod immediately following that game. I'll be in Oklahoma City for that, and we'll record from there, and we'll see if that got another game coming for Game 6. So that's what's up next on the show. Appreciate you all listening. Until what is that? Wednesday? Until Wednesday with Kyle. He's Britt. He's Kyle.
How I'm feeling, man, I hope it never stop, yeah. Green and hot so you can find me in the crowd, yeah. Don't let standards ever bring you down, yeah. Hope you dancing like nobody else around, yeah.